Okay, so I'm I quite like a lot of what Maajid Nawaaz does. Very positive about the majority of what he does. Um, he was on LBC today, and I think my liking for him waned quite considerably because he went off and did some anti-reality stuff. In my opinion, anti-reality stuff. He started arguing for something that has no um, merit in reason or truth or fact or reality in any way whatsoever. And that is, other than some people's perception, and that is this idea that you can't be openly conservative anymore. That being openly conservative is something frowned upon. It's not safe to do. The left will shut you down and bully you into being quiet. There's a few reasons I had a problem with this. Many, actually. I think for a start, the show was weighted towards proving Majid's point. He didn't really have anyone on that disagreed with his point. Um, the closest he came was someone that argued that uh, they're just not, they just don't understand the world well enough. People on the right, so they can get they that's why they feel this way. They feel guilty about their opinions, and it just seems to, if for me, I mean, we just had another Conservative victory in this country, the UK, the second one. We've just had the Brexit vote, which people on the right won, and yet they're claiming that they feel they can't express their opinions. They're shouted down by the left, and that, according to an article in Spiked online magazine. Um, I'm not that familiar with Spiked, but the little that I know of it, it suggests it's right leaning. But Majid starts off by giving it this status as a free speech vehicle. So right from the start, as it's a free speech vehicle, um, it from his point of view, it makes criticising it very difficult because immediately you're criticising free speech, and how dare you call it right leaning? Um, and I don't know. I just get the feeling that Majid's going, uh, getting, believing some things that aren't true, and it's the way he starts to use terminology. So, leftist and regressive left. It's a For a start, he's not. Though that type of word, you're starting from an attack, an insult. Um, um, it's not the left or left-leaning people. Leftist. It's always it's terminology that's used by aggressively right-wing people, and yet here's Majid saying the left are the ones bullying the right, so they can't express themselves. Um, you've got they massively dominate online, the right wing, and they just constantly use terms like cuck, libtard, SJW, in order to silence debate. If you challenge their opinions and argue for a different opinion, you're told you're virtue signaling. You're a social justice warrior, you're a libtard, and you're virtue signaling. And Majid uses regressive leftist to mean people who apparently, this is my understanding of what he said on the radio recently, people that believe in cultural relativism. But he's one of the only people who uses it in that way. Most people just call anyone on the left regressive for being on the left. Um, if you believe in progressive taxation, you're regressive. If you believe that gay people should be treated well, you're aggressive. If you, um, it's really, if you don't believe people should be openly racist, you're regressive. Um, yeah, so that's what I experience. This constant barrage of attacks from people on the right, and oh, the media, uh, television in the UK is tries to be balanced, but still ends up being right leaning because, in an effort to be fair, they end up giving too much time to people like Nigel Farage. He's never been voted into power. Um, he commands only a small part of the electorate, or gets voted for by a fairly small part of the electorate, and yet here he is telling us all how to live our lives. Nigel Farage is on the right. He's a long way over to the right, and he's got an LBC program where he expresses his views. People are constantly calling into LBC, which is mainly staffed by people on the political right, and they're constantly calling in, expressing right wing views, with no embarrassment or fear at all. And they do constantly say kind of things along the lines of, you're not allowed to say this, before saying the thing they're not allowed. And Maajid seems to have bought this. He seems to have fallen for it hook, line, and sinker, that the opposite of the truth is true, that the right aren't allowed to speak, as they tell you all the things they're not allowed to speak about publicly, with no concern for um, common decency. I just don't get where he's coming from. I just see the opposite, because the opposite's true. My mum's local pub, where I live in Bristol, it's more left-leaning, more liberal. But there's still people expressing right-wing views there, with openly, fairly openly. But I go to my mum's pub in rural Somerset. People being openly racist. Using the N word, and it's acceptable for some of them. Not all of them. People way off to the right. And yet here's Maajid. No one can speak their mind, especially if they're on the right. They're persecuted. So they win the election. They win the election in the United States as well. They win Brexit, and here's Maajid. They're not allowed to speak. They're able to dominate a radio station. Now, I know the presenters try to be fair and try to be balanced, but it's still pretty obvious that they're politically right-leaning for the most part, not every single one of them, including Nigel Farage having a show, and formerly the Katie Hopkins, who called for a Holocaust of Muslims quite openly and obviously. Maajid is somehow blaming people on the left for that because she wasn't allowed to speak. So that's why she said what she was allowed to speak. It's not reality. They are allowed to speak. They're allowed to say it more than ever, especially since they won the Brexit vote. And yet they're still claiming, I can't. I'm not allowed to express my opinions because just get called a racist if I express my opinions. And one of the callers on this show said that after the Brexit vote, he came out as voting for Brexit, and he lost friends over it. People blocked him, and he had to block people because of the backlash that he got, and it was terrible. But Maajid didn't question this any further. Totally took it at face value. I'm not asking him to attack him, but just say, how exactly did you come out to these people? What exactly did you say that that triggered this? How did you word your coming out? And suddenly, I think Maajid would have had a lot less sympathy for him, I suspect. It's just really odd. And I think the reality is that there's a perception on the right that they're not allowed to speak while speaking. Just sort of another good example. Most popular papers in the UK are right-leaning. The Daily Mail, the Sun, and the Express. Very right-wing, dog whistle racism, and quite brutal bullying tones throughout. And you've got people writing for that paper like Melanie Phillips, whose default rhetorical style is bullying and strawmanning. She struggles to does a few questioning of people to try and break down their views, but in a Socratic method, I suppose. But she quickly slips into characterizing them in a way that suits her and badgering them and attacking them. Throughout, it's aggressive. It's totally mean-spirited, and and yet this massively popular paper um, that dominates the debate in the UK with many bullying commentators working for it, and yet here's Maajid citing a few outliers of people on the left, Corbynistas and anarchists. They're controlling everything, and Tory voters can't even speak their minds, and it's just not true. They do all the time, and they just don't like the response they get, and they say, "Oh, I'm being called racist," even when after the Brexit vote, there was a very clearly documented increase in the number of hate crimes and racism, a lot more openly expressed racism. And all that was really pointed out was, well, you seem to be on the side of the racists. And the valid response to that from the people who feel that they're not racist on the right is, you're doing a guilt by association. That's not fair. That's a valid response. But what they actually do when faced with this fact that they're on the same side as the racists, as the bigots, and just stick their fingers in their ears and go, you're not fair, you're a meanie, you're a bully. And it's not the tone of the people criticising them that's bullying and badgering. I get far more of it from the other side. And Maajid just doesn't seem to want to believe that. And he talked about Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin left the Young Turks because he couldn't express himself. As if he's on some sort of cultural fringe where, constantly getting attacked for his views. The reality is that Dave Rubin mainly gets attacked for not debating the left, only attacking it. That's what Dave Rubin gets attacked for. He will only have people on the left on his show that won't challenge him, that won't give him a hard time. His own views are quite clearly, if you analyse what he said, very right-leaning. He's a right libertarian, very obviously a right libertarian. He's a married gay man that thinks it's okay for people to discriminate against him as a married gay man. So if people refuse to serve him in a shop because of his sexuality, he thinks that's fine, and he's explicitly said that. And he thinks people should move house to get away from the discrimination, uh, rather than fight to be able to buy groceries and vegetables from their local shop. Their local shop won't serve them, and it's privately owned. That owner of that shop's got every right to treat them that way, to be openly bigoted against Dave for his sexuality, and Dave should have to move. That's what he said. And Majid's fine with that, Um, Dave Rubin still claims to be um, a liberal in the modern sense. He says he's a classical liberal now, but he still talks as if he's on the left. And he's not. He has white supremacists on his show. Now, they claim they're not white supremacists and white nationalists, but they believe in a white ethno-state. And they repeat white nationalist and racist talking points constantly. Will speak to Alex Jones, but he won't talk to someone that he thinks might challenge him. And he'll look for excuses. He'll find ways to avoid discussion with them. He'll find an article that someone else associated with them wrote and said, you're clearly dishonest because you had this on your website. And I said, okay. The person, I think Sam Sader. Sam Sader said, yeah, one of my staff wrote that. I'll get rid of it. Someone I work with wrote that. I'll get rid of it. I'm sorry. Will you talk to me? No, you're dishonest. And it's there's always an excuse why Dave Rubin won't debate anyone on the left. He'll have lefty people on the show. He'll have people on the left, but no one that's really going to give him a hard time because he's scared. And he generally tends. I'm getting stuck on Dave Rubin now, but it's as if Maajid's heard this fantasy that you can't openly express your views now by people like Dave Rubin, that's paid, has built a career out of expressing his views and providing a platform for very right-wing people and giving them softball interviews. That's his whole shtick. It's his career. He gets paid to do that. And yet there's Maajid saying, he's not allowed to express himself. People like that in the UK, they're not allowed to express themselves. Despite vast amounts of evidence that they can. Maajid's own radio station and his fellow presenters, and the fact they get paid, the media, the print media, there's no evidence, hard evidence, on Maajid's side, apart from a couple articles in a free speech journal that, I don't know, I always hear people on the right talking about free speech, but when it comes down to it, they're quite happy with the tyranny of the majority being used to shut people down. They seem to quite enjoy screaming cuck at you and calling you names, telling you to kill yourself online to shut you down, while simultaneously saying free speech is an absolute right and always should be. And upsets me, pisses me off, and it pisses me off that Maajid's bought this stuff, and that's why I've made this video for him. And I wouldn't like you to think, Maajid, that this is an essay that I've written and I'm now sending it to you. I've done lots of preparation. I've been with my mum all day trying to look after her, and this is off the cuff from a non-professional. I can't see, without being extremely biased, how you can disagree with what I've said. You know, yeah. I haven't finished yet. I've just remembered. Going back to Melanie Phillips, hearing her on Radio 4, because she's not allowed to express her opinions. The right people on the right, they're shouted down. Hearing her on Radio 4, not just on the moral maze, again dominated by the right, she on one of the other shows she got to do for them, she actually squealed as she said, our universities have become safe spaces. Her voice raised a few notes. Our universities have become safe spaces. And it's, I don't know if there's many people studying at university that would claim to have had a trigger warning or that the whole university was a safe space. I think there's very few that would actually be able to back that up. A few very right-wing commentators being deplatformed, published authors being deplatformed, with their own access to massive media sites that are very well paid being deplatformed. People with YouTube channels with massive followings being deplatformed. It's not really an example of a right being taken from someone, a right to someone's speech. It's an example of someone with actually quite a lot of power and strength and agency in society, only being able to channel that in certain ways. Meanwhile, the most free speech I get is to make this video, this YouTube video, Maajid Nawaaz, who's I don't know, yeah, who's I'm very disappointed in, chosen to believe a rhetoric from people who feel bullied, while simultaneously the evidence is they can say whatever the hell they like, no matter how aggressive, and get away with it. And I just pretend that it's always the left, Why are the left so violent, Yeah, rape threats, it's free speech. It does happen. It does. The N word, it's free speech. They do this, and here you are. They can't express themselves. They're allowed to say more now than they were 10 years ago. People on the more fringe of the right, and even just on the right generally. And it's obvious. You can see the evidence all around you, and you're choosing to ignore it in favour of feeling sorry for people that have no problem with the powerful dominating those with less strength and power and agency in society. I think my point is that for many on the right, disagreeing with them, challenging them openly, having a debate is bullying. Presenting them with facts that they don't like is bullying. Yeah. What do I know? I'm just a snowflake, libtard, SJW, cuck. That's what I am. I'm a regressive leftist. That's why I'm so angry, because I just get called these bloody names all the time, and here you are taking this anything said by someone on the right that feels a bit sorry for themselves, despite probably they do often express, they have probably expressed questionable views. Just take what they say at face value. I hope it's several sargons long. I hope you take the time to watch this. Thank you, Maajid.